In the name of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen. Hello, I'm so pleased to be with you again today. I want to read the beginning of the gospel lesson, but let me, before I read it, tell you what the question was like, the question that is posed to Jesus. It's like this, and tell me if you can come up with a good answer to this question. Let's say that you are walking along the street and you hear two people talking. And one person turns to the neighbor and says, "Tell me, do you still beat your wife?" I ask you, is there a good answer to that question? No matter how you answer, aren't you in for it? Didn't you just admit guilt? That's the situation in the gospel reading today. And so let me read the beginning of that to you. The Pharisees went and plotted to entrap Jesus in what he said. So they sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians, saying, "Teacher, we know that you are sincere and teach the way of God in accordance with the truth, and show deference to no one, for you do not regard people with partiality. Tell us then what you think. Is it lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not?" They just gave Jesus that same question, "Do you beat your wife?" Still, there is no answer that does not make him guilty in someone's eyes. So let me tell you the political background to the question. The Herodians are Jewish people who support Herod, who is the governor of the area under the Roman emperor. Now he's kind of a turncoat, part Jewish person who rose to power by bowing to the foreign government. Herodians, like Herod, say, let's accommodate the foreign government. Let's pay our taxes. Let's stay in their good graces. Now, the Pharisees are the opposite. They are a very strict Jewish group, and they believe that there should not be a foreign dominance, that you certainly shouldn't pay taxes to this emperor. So there are two different groups, and they're enemies. However, today they combine because they consider Jesus to be an even stronger enemy. So together they hope to entrap him. Most of the people listening to this conversation will be in line with the Pharisees. They do not want to pay taxes to the foreign government. So Jesus is sitting there and he is receiving the question, and there is no answer that will not get him in trouble. And so, as always, his very quick mind is able to dance circles around his enemies. And he says, "Show me a coin." Everyone knows what's on a coin. Everyone in the first century realizes the emperor of Rome will have his image stamped on every coin. And the emperor of Rome proclaims that he is descended from the gods. He is God. So you have the Pharisees already finding a problem with this. One, how dare the emperor say he is God? That's blasphemy. Two, the Ten Commandments order us not to have graven images. And that means an image of God, an image of the emperor is a graven image in their eye. So already this coin is breaking two important commandments for the Pharisees, for the Jews. Now, the image on the coin, of course, is the emperor, and that's what they say. And so he says, well, give to the emperor what belongs to the emperor, and to God what belongs to God. In other words, what in our world, what is in the image of God? Everyone listening realizes they go back to the story in the book we call Genesis, where God creates male and female and says, "Male and female, I created them in my image, in the image of God." What in this world is in the image of God? Every single human. Give to God what is in God's image. That's his answer. And of course, his enemies have no recourse at this moment against him. What I want to think about with you today is, what is the currency of the physical world? What is the currency of God's world? That's my first question, and I want to go through that with you. The second one is this: how do we wield these two forms of currency? What is the commandment? What is the right way to do it? So backing up, what is the currency in the world? It's money. In our country, it is the dollars, the bills, or the coins, the two forms of money currency. In other countries, there are different forms of money, but that's how the physical world is able to order itself, by the currency called money. What is the currency in the spiritual world? It's different. There is no end to it. It is absolutely not ending. And when we spend it, it reaches farther than we can imagine very often. And so I want to give you three forms of this currency. The first one is simple: kindness, offering kindness to someone. Let me give you three examples of this. So when Saul, who was persecuting the new Christians, the early Christians, when Saul was on the way to Damascus, he had a vision of God. And God said, "Why are you persecuting me?" And he realized, I'm doing it all wrong. God is who I'm persecuting. The Christians are on the right road. I must become one of them and support their effort. And so he turns to Christian disciples when he is able to get up. He's struck down with this vision when he's able to get up. And there is a huge discussion, because most of the people who are early Christians say he's trying to infiltrate our camp so that he can then report us to the enemies and have us killed. Don't let him in. Do not have anything to do with him. One person has a dream. In that dream, he understands, this man is now a man of God. Let me support him. One person offered Saul, who became St. Paul, wrote more than half of the New Testament. One person showed him kindness. If that had not happened, we wouldn't have most of the New Testament. We would not have that fledgling church that was birthed in several communities thanks to Paul and then spread to the entire world. That one act of kindness had huge consequences in our church. It's not just important people who are touched by acts of kindness. In World War II, in Germany under Hitler, it was a bad idea to be a Jewish person. They were worse than lepers. They were pariahs. You wanted nothing to do with them because they were on their way out. After the war was over, countless people, Jewish people, said, one person smiling at me, saying a kind word to me at that time, meant everything, and I will never forget it. Small acts of kindness reach through such cruel times to souls. Let me tell you one more. This happened in apartheid in South Africa. And you know, apartheid is when South Africa was under a government that said Blacks and people of color are not in the same line as the white people, and therefore they must bow to us in every situation. So there was a young boy walking with his mother, a black boy, walking with his mother on a sidewalk. Now the rule was, as you were walking on a sidewalk, if a white person walked by, you stepped into a ditch so the white person could continue without any problems. Coming toward them was a tall white gentleman. They were getting ready to step into the ditch. The white gentleman stepped into the ditch, took his hat off and bowed to the mother of that young boy. And as the mother and the boy walked along, he said, "Mom, who is that person?" She said, "That was an Anglican priest." And he thought to himself, that's what I want to be when I grow up. And he was. And his name is Archbishop Desmond Tutu, the person who helped dismantle apartheid, that great bishop, his beginning, his vocational beginning, acted with a random act of kindness. The currency in the spiritual realm is free, and it can have consequences that never end and that continue and grow. Here's another currency, and this is a simple one: praying to see the image of God in other people. I remember when I was in seminary 40 years ago, of course, we had a change in deans. The ruling body decided what we have to do is have a dean who can fundraise. Well, I was a seminarian. I didn't know about fundraising. I wasn't interested in that situation. But I noticed something about the new dean. I noticed that every time I passed him on the campus, every time I passed him and he would say hello, I felt as though he saw something in me that was very good, that I had no idea what it was. And it struck me. And later, years later, I told other friends of mine who went to seminary, they said, I had the very same experience. That dean prayed to see the image of God in each seminarian while he was dean. What a powerful prayer that was, because we felt it, each of us. To see the image of God in others is a gift. To pray that is a gift that reaches souls who don't understand what it is or why. The last one is a very simple one, just a generous act of faith, of trust. And I'll tell you how I heard this one. I was once, about 10 or 15 years ago, I worked in a church, two churches actually, in Western Connecticut. And one of them was in a very wealthy small town where there were a lot of former summer homes of people who lived in New York City, wealthy enough to have two homes. And then when they retired to their summer home in Connecticut. One of those people was Ledley Laughlin, Reverend Ledley Laughlin, the former rector of St. Luke's in the Field. Now, when I had been in seminary, he was then rector. And I woke up one Sunday morning, everyone on the campus was abuzz with this news. They said, did you hear? St. Luke's in the Field burned down completely overnight. Well, he was the rector at that time, and I talked to him 40 years later. We discussed it. He said, I was overwhelmed. I was in a tailspin. I didn't know how we were going to regroup, how we were going to fundraise, how we were going to rebuild our wonderful church. It was too much for me. He said, and one Sunday we would meet in a little portion of the building that had not burned down. We were on our way to that building. In front of it was a little girl selling cookies, and the sign said, fundraising to rebuild St. Luke's in the Field. He said it was like that little boy who gave Jesus the fishes and the loaves and it fed 5,000 people. It was like the widow's mite in that parable of Jesus. It was so tiny, but it reached my heart. It gave me this sense of, if she can do it, we adults can do it too. And it began me and the leaders of the church on that road. And now St. Luke's in the Field has been beautifully rebuilt. Small acts of spiritual currency have far-reaching effects. Now, how are we to wield these two forms of currency? Because they're opposite. If I have money, if I'm spending money of my company, I'm supposed to be very transparent about it. Last week, our wonderful accountant said, there was a check written to Mother Rose and there were no receipts along with it. Can you explain it? So I spent hours tracking down all of the receipts, which explained to the penny what that was about. It was the discretionary account buying our books for the anti-racism book. Transparency is so important, and I felt like it was time well spent, not because I cared about those receipts, but because I care that our church knows that every time anyone spends money, the reason is going to be available. Everyone is going to know that it was spent well, that it was not used in a frivolous way, that it was honestly spent. That's the way we do it in the physical world. Transparency is the goal. Spiritual realm, completely opposite. Jesus said, when you pray, pray secretly in your home so no one knows. Don't be like a Pharisee who stands outside the synagogue saying, I pray to God many times a day. I give alms to the poor. He said, don't let anyone know. Don't let the left hand know what your right hand does. The spiritual way is to not let everyone know what you're doing, but rather to do it quietly and let God know. I remember when I was at that same couple of parishes in Western Connecticut, one of the parishes had an AA group for teenagers and young adults. And there was one young man who was like very charismatic, very athletic and nice looking, and he could gather a lot of people into that group. We had a meeting one day and he said, I tell the newcomers something. I give them an assignment for 2 weeks. I say, do a good deed for one person every day. But, he said, the catch is no one can know what you do. It must be done in secret. He said, for instance, if you open the door for someone who's got, bags in their arms and they can't get that door, they know you did it. It can't count. It's got to be completely in secret. If you help someone across the street because they're having trouble getting there, doesn't count. They knew what you did. Do something every day for someone else that no one knows about. He said it has an amazing way of building our spiritual capacity, which we need, he said in AAs. As Jesus said, make it secret. We wield our currency in secret when it's a spiritual currency. Now, let me ask you, do we pay taxes to our government? Well, we'd better. I do know people who spend their lives trying to be under the radar so they will not pay taxes, but we do. We pay for all of the things that we are able to receive through our government. Do we pay taxes to God? Well, the good news is our tax has been paid. As it says in Philippians, while we were yet sinners, God, Jesus, became human to take upon him the human form, to live with us, teach us, to die for us, to descend to hell, and to reach everyone in bondage in hell, and the hell that we know of greed, of anger, of hatred, of separation from God, to draw us back to God. Our tax has been paid. We only need to offer thanksgiving to God for that wonderful gift, for the gift of presence with God. And let me end with a blessing that I received from someone who said, may you seek the face of God and be blessed with the recognition of God in the face of each and every person that you meet this day. Amen.